All right, good evening, everybody. It's 7 o'clock, but we'll take a couple minutes to let a few more people show up. While we're waiting, I will ask a few questions to gauge our audience tonight. In the chat panel, please type, what type of retirement and assets do you currently have? This can be 401ks, TSPs for your military and federal government folk, real estate, life insurance, or annuities. So we got some TSPs, we got some Roth investments, 401ks. Awesome, awesome. And do you feel like you have adequately planned for your retirement? And as expected, we kind of got a mixed bag. We got some yeses, we got some nos, some maybe, you know. And then the last question before we kick this off, are you open-minded to non-traditional retirement assets? All right, sounds good. Thanks, guys, for that. If you want to ask some questions, please ask it in the Q&A tab. That will allow us to get to your questions and mark them off so that we know we've answered them. I'm sure there's going to be a few stragglers, but I think we should get started for now. So those that don't know me, my name is Kevin Noles. I'm an enrolled agent with the IRS. I'm the owner of Wincove Tax and Consulting. I work with Jeff Sedlitz over at Family Tree Financial Group. I'm also the CFO of Homes for Warriors. I'm a licensed insurance financial representative. In 2018, I got my bachelor's degree. And then in this last year, I got my master's degree. I'm also a retiree from the Navy. Some of you guys know me from there. I was born in Portland, Oregon. So my hobbies, soccer, tennis, bowling, traveling, reading. I've been married for 17 years. And I have 3 kids, Michael, Kayla, and Luca. And now Jeff Sedlitz will take over from here.
Well, hi, everybody. I'm going to kind of not bore you with all of these bullet points, but I'll give you a couple of highlights. Started my career in '93, so we'll be celebrating 29 years coming up soon. I'm the president of Family Tree Financial Group. And between us, our firm has over 200 years of combined industry experience. We have clients in about 18 states and 2 additional countries aside from the US. In addition to my work, I am originally from, I always say from the South Bronx. That's in New York. And I didn't live there very long. Grew up mostly in Queens. And I've been living in Florida since February '95. This is home. Been in St. Johns County, Florida since 2009. I was a musician for a long, long time. Singer, songwriter, and guitarist. Did double duty while I was in this industry. Hobbies, I still love music and go to concerts. As a matter of fact, if I wasn't here tonight, I would have been enjoying the Earth, Wind, and Fire concert here in town tonight. But get to spend time with all of you tonight, so I'm looking forward to that. Big sports fan. I love to cook and watch movies. We do that together, my wife and I. And like Kevin, I married my wife Dawn in 2004, so we can share that. I have 3 children, and I also have 3 grandchildren, and the oldest will turn 11 on Saturday, so that's pretty cool. And here's my little quote, and I've had this as part of my bio for probably close to 20 years. I've always pledged to serve my clients and their families with the same care and concern that I would my own family. And you know why that's important? It really is who we are in a nutshell at Family Tree Financial Group. You know, when we founded the company, the idea was to treat everyone as family. It's not the way it is in every case out in the world, but it is here. When we work with a client, when we make a recommendation to that client, they can have complete confidence it's the same recommendation we would make to our mother, father, brother, sister if they were in the same situation. So that's who we are as individuals. It's who we are as a company. And I guess it's time for us to get on with the show. What you paid for your cover charge, your admission, is all you'll ever pay us. We don't charge a fee for our ideas, advice, knowledge, recommendations, none of that. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about retirement, income in retirement. I'm sure this is why you gave up a Thursday evening, was so that you can get some more ideas about this. Hopefully it's something that's on your mind. It's something that you're interested in. And there are a lot of factors that we have to consider when we're determining how to position ourselves properly for income in retirement. One of those things is, as we save, we put away money, we stash little nuts like a squirrel does. We put our little money away each week or each month. We want to make sure it grows. So we want to look to have growth in our assets, in our bag of money that we're trying to accumulate by retirement day. But there's another factor that we're going to talk about quite a bit tonight that most people don't consider, and that is not Texas, but taxes. So growth in taxes is going to be a good portion of what we discussed tonight. We'll also talk, like Kevin said, about maybe some unorthodox or unusual or different methods that you're not as familiar with. So we'll plant some seeds with you tonight and give you some food for thought, hopefully. So we need to make sure that we can grow our accounts, but we have to consider taxes and the impact that it's going to have on our income in retirement. And to kind of illustrate that, I'm going to kind of go through a hypothetical scenario with you. Keep in mind it's just hypothetical to illustrate how much each of those two elements, growth and taxes, play a part in your retirement income. So for instance, here we have a 64-year-old who wants to retire next year at 65. And he has $1 million, or she has $1 million accumulated in this IRA account. And at 65 wants to start receiving this income, and they would like to be able to maintain that to age 100. So there are a lot of different ways to balance a portfolio as we're aging into retirement. We want to be a little more conservative, have a little bit more guarantee in our positioning. So in this, again, hypothetical example, we have a 50-50 portfolio. So that means 50% of our assets are in equities, market-related vehicles, earning us, in this example, 8%. We also have 50% going to fixed income instruments, and those are earning us at 2.5%. And we're assuming an effective tax rate of 20% currently. So here's where we're going to get into the income. And some of you, if you're as interested as I hope in retirement, you may have heard about something called a 4% rule. 4% rule simply means that if you have a retirement account, something like this $1 million IRA, that you should be able to, in some ways of thinking, be able to take out 4% annually without much fear of running out of money. Now that's changed. It used to be a 6% rule. Now it's been a 4% rule for many years. Now it's below 3%. And that's largely due to longevity. We're living a lot longer. We need our money to last a lot longer in retirement. We'll get into some of that later too. But I just wanted to touch that because I'm not going to use a 3% or a 4% for this example. I'm going to use a 5%. And let's say we're going to have an annual income of $50,000. Well, let's just, again, for hypothetical purposes, we'll use $50,000. But now, again, to illustrate how growth and taxes play a part, let's examine that. Let's talk about growth. Let's say our equities position doesn't earn 8%. Let's say it only earns 5%. So how does that affect us? Well, we'd be looking at probably about $42,000 after taxes instead of $50,000. And, you know, is $8,000 less a lot of money or a little money? Depends. Do I owe it to you or do you owe it to me? That might determine what I think about that. But $8,000 a year is quite a bit when it's a fixed income. It's not like we want to go back to work. We're not going to work on our resume at 66 years old and get it back out there. We just stopped. So that's quite a big difference when we're expecting 50, and because of the growth not measuring up, the actual didn't measure up either, and it's only 42,000. Let's take a look on the other side. Let's say growth is fine, but taxes change. And that's a big discussion today. What if our tax rate's no longer 20%, but what if it jumps to 30%? Well, now we're down to 43,000. So we're in roughly the same position there. So again, we could see where if the growth isn't right or the taxes go up or something, everything affects our income. What I'm not going to show you is something worse. What if both happen? What if our equities don't measure up? We're at 4 or 5 or 6% for the year, and taxes go up. What if we get hit twice? It's going to be even worse. So we won't go there today, but just know that all of these are real things that can happen. And so taxes, again, are something I think most people don't think about. They think about saving. They think about putting money away. I need to save, or I should save, or I plan to save, or I am saving, but not enough. All of those savings related conversations that we have with ourselves. But the tax conversation is not one that comes up a lot. So I want to make sure that I bring that up sufficiently tonight. But we also have to consider, when we're talking about growth, we have to consider market risk, right? The market is a roller coaster. And this is an example of that roller coaster ride. The S&P 500, in recent years, it's done exceptionally well. And you can see that here on the chart. This is from 2000 to 2020. It's a 20-year look back, as we call it. So the most recent 20 years, how did things go? And I'm going to have a little fun too. I'm going to let you put in the chat. And if you would, take a guess. What do you think the average return's been in the S&P in the last 20 years? What do you think the average has been? Let's put that in the chat. What percentage would you guess? Excellent guess. Okay. Seeing some different numbers here. Let's see if you get one more. Okay, so we have quite a variance in what I'm seeing in the guesses. And, you know, if you don't know, there's no wrong answer. This is what it is. It's a guess. When you look at the returns, and one of you was awfully close, by the way, you're right there. When you look at the performance of the S&P over these most recent 20 years, you'll see that roller coaster that I referred to, the ups and downs and ups and downs. And then you see it just kept going up recently. So let me get away from there again so you don't get hung up on the numbers. I want to get the concept to you first, and then I'll go back to the numbers for you. You know how you hear a lot of people, I call them financial entertainers, the ones on television and radio, and they tell you where to put your money and how to spend your money and all of those things. And they don't know you yet, but they tell you what to do with your money. So I have mixed emotions. But let's just talk about it. The common theme is telling you where to invest. That you should, have you looked at this mutual fund over the last 5 years? It's performed exceptionally well. It's returned 8% on average. Or this stock has, can't go wrong with this. The stock is booming. It's returning 11% on average. And the fact of the matter is we don't get paid on averages. So I like to do an example, an illustration to show that. And so if you'll rhetorically participate with me, I won't have you do this in the chat, but just kind of you can answer to yourselves. Let's say we have $100,000 in an account. And year one, that account loses 50%. Again, answer to yourself, how much do you have left? We had 100,000, we lost 50%. I'm imagining it's unanimous that you all said we have 50,000 left. All right, so we had 100, we lost 50%, we're at 50,000. So now let's say year two, we have a 50% increase. How much money do we have? And I'm going to guess that probably some of you said 100,000. Because we started with 100, we lost 50, we gained 50, we're back to 100. But the fact of the matter is that's not how it works. And some of you, I'm sure, got it right as well. But let me share with you how it actually works in case you don't know. We went from 100, we lost 50%, we went down to 50,000. So now when we gained 50%, we're gaining it on the remaining balance, which is 50,000. So we've only picked up another 25. So our new balance is 75,000. So 50 minus and 50 plus doesn't make you whole again. We're still short 25%. That's why this is so important. So when we look at this, and we look at 2000, and you could see where the market lost 9.10%. This is the dot-com bubble bursting. And the continuation of it the following year at 11.89, almost 12%, and then over 22% the following year. So we're down 40% before there's a correction. And we could start to see that here. So we're having significant gain of 28%, but it's on a greatly reduced balance. So that's how this plays out. Now, for those of you that guessed at what you thought the stock market averaged, and again, one of you was really, you were right there. 6.61% average annual return over 20 years. And when you look at this, you can't imagine, how could that be? There's some really big numbers, but that's how it works out when you average it out. So again, we don't get paid on averages, we get paid on actuals. And that's why it's so important to understand that concept, at least for us. We have to understand it to guide you properly and make recommendations properly. But now the problem is, well, what do you do? Well, you know, if we're nearing retirement, if we're getting things in order for retirement, and maybe we're concerned about the volatility of the market, we're concerned about the ups and downs, and you know, when we had an administration change, there was a lot of talk about that and how it might affect accounts. This is an alternative. This is a safe alternative. You can put money in the bank. I'm not saying it's a good alternative. I'm saying it's a safe, a fairly safe alternative. You can see average interest rates. These are based on last year. They haven't really changed much, so I didn't update it. But you know, we're at 5% for a savings account, 12% on the money market. CDs, if you tie it up for 5 years, you get about 1/3 of a percentage point. And then you're going to receive a 1099 at the end of the year that you have to pay tax on that interest income. So where are we making any money in that regard? So the safe measure is, it's not a great measure, but it is available to us. And while interest rates are exceptionally low, the Fed has made it clear that they plan to keep those rates low for several years. And we could see that it's a year later and the rates are still as low as we've ever seen them. And one of the reasons is in part, who owes the most money? Who has the most debt in this country? Oh, the country does. We'll keep the rates low. So we have this saver's dilemma that we call it, right? We have this opportunity where we can assume high risk in the market to try to obtain more growth. We can take on very little risk or no risk and not really experience any return or growth on it. And so we have this dilemma, for lack of any better way to put it. What do you do as a saver? Someone who's trying to accumulate money, but maybe isn't crazy about risk. So again, we're going to share some ideas. We're going to share some concepts. We're hopefully going to open some eyes and educate some people on some things that you haven't seen before. Well, I did promise we're going to talk more about taxes. So, and one of the things that Kevin mentioned, he is trained. He's an enrolled agent with the IRS. He's a tax planner. He knows his stuff backwards and forwards as well. So when we talk about tax risk, we have to determine and prepare for what might occur. And let's do a little poll here. Would you, and just check one of these boxes here, do you think the taxes are going to go up, go down, stay the same, or you're not sure? So we'll give you a minute to just pick one of those. Need the Jeopardy music in the background, Kevin.
Next time, I'll make sure I bring it next time. So it looks like we're at 100% of going up. I think we got a smart audience tonight.
Yep. So I don't want to ruin the end of the movie for you, but yeah, I think it's a pretty safe assumption taxes are going up, and I'll review that with you as we get to it. But let's talk about First thing, what if they go down? What if taxes are lower? Not that we would expect that, right? Here's what happens a lot of times, and for some of you, you may relate to this, right? You may have gone to work somewhere, and when you did all of your new hire paperwork, they handed you another form and said, here, fill this out. You can participate in our 401k. You hear that? And that's the wording that they use. It's in air quotes, participate in the 401k. And the idea, I'll give you the logic behind it. You may have heard it this way. In your working years, you can reduce your taxable income with these deductions, this participation into your company-sponsored 401k plan, and defer those taxes. You have to understand what the title at the top of the page says, tax-deferred savings. It doesn't mean tax-eliminated savings. It didn't go away. It might have felt like it for 20 or 30 years while you were working, but it's there. It is tax-deferred. So the idea is, again, during our working years, we're lowering our taxable income while we put away money into this account, deferring taxes to later when we're in our retirement years. And the thought is that we would be in a lower tax bracket at that time. And when we finally pay taxes, well, now we're paying on a lower percentage. But as we said, taxes may go up and that percentage may increase as well. So we may or may not actually reduce that. Let me also throw a question at you, and we'll keep this one rhetorical as well, because I think based on the audience participation, I know we have a smart audience here. If you were a farmer, would you rather pay tax on the seed or on the harvest? The little tiny seed or the great big harvest, which would you rather pay taxes on? And of course, I think everyone here is on target. You want to pay it on the seed, on the little bit. But this is actually the reverse, right? We're going to pay taxes on the larger amount, on the full retirement. When you and I'm getting ahead, but I don't mind. I think you can keep up with this. When we talk about a retirement account, such as a 401k, an IRA, any of these tax-favored accounts, tax-deferred accounts, you didn't pay money on your money that went in. If you have a match from your company, you didn't pay money on tax on that money that went in. You didn't pay tax on either, and you haven't paid tax on the gain. So our family member, our Uncle Sam, is going to have his hand out later on. He said, all right, I'm not going to put my hand out now while you're working and while you're contributing, while you're saving. But trust me, both hands will be out later. And you'll see how this all works out. So I'm not trying to upset anybody or depress anyone, but open the eyes to what is real and what we've all been taught, right? I know when I, years and years ago, was introduced to 401k, this is how it was sold to me. It's a no-brainer. Makes sense, right? Defer those taxes. Later, you'll be in a lower tax bracket. You can worry about it then. But, will you be in a lower tax bracket in retirement? So there's a lot of things that can affect that as well, right? Situational things can affect it. If you're married now and the spouse deceases, you're no longer filing married, maybe you're filing single, that's a double whammy. So now your tax rate goes up and your income went down, probably, right? Maybe both of you had Social Security money coming in, and now you only have one of those Social Security checks coming in. If there was a pension involved, maybe there were survivorship benefits, maybe there weren't. So income probably is going to go down by some degree. Could be a large degree. I've seen that happen over the years. But in either case, if we go from filing married to filing as an individual, we're going to see an increase in our tax rate. So situational things can affect our taxes. We talk about this, the greatest generation, the prior generations to us, the ones that, I'll talk about my parents and my grandparents, and living through, either as an adult or as a small child, the Depression, and that fear of going without, that fear of not having, that those generations grew up with, taught them to be frugal, to be cautious, to save for a rainy day, all of those things. So they have ways that they can self-manage some of the taxes. And in a lot of cases, they've cut back, right? They cut back on going out, they cut back on travel, they cut back on, they cut coupons, they don't buy the name brand, they buy a generic or a store brand. So there's just so many ways that generation has learned to make that money last. And then we talk about, the generation that we have in front of us today, the current generation, and they don't have that same ethic, that same mentality. It's more today. It's more immediate gratification in a lot of cases. And again, if we're hit with either a growth adjustment or a tax adjustment that we need to make, it's going to be much harder for this current generation. We think about that greatest generation that I refer to. It was nothing to buy a large can of coffee and take care of the coffee needs in the household for 2 months. Where the current generation, and everyone's guilty of it at some point, we're going to Starbucks, we're going to Dunkin', we're going somewhere and picking up a coffee for $4 or $5 instead of a can for $9 that we can make at home and take care of our coffee needs. So, there's a lot of strategy, there's a lot of that has to occur. And there's a lot of education when it comes to this. I will say this, and I'm going to kind of go off topic for a minute. To have a great retirement sometimes might include a little bit of, I hate to use the word sacrifice, because I'm not suggesting going without, but I'm saying maybe putting off the immediate gratification for the delayed gratification. And for me, retirement, I'm just going to talk about myself for a minute. Retirement is an option. It doesn't mean you have to sit on your front porch and drink Country Time lemonade and look at the puppy, sitting beside you. That could be retirement. But to me, retirement is, I have the option. Do I want to get up and go to work? Do I want to go see my grandchildren? Do I want to take them on a cruise every year? Do I want to, and then fill in the blank. But I think having proper planning in place for me is peace of mind, and it gives me those options that I can do what I want, when I want, with whom I want, as often as I want. So it's about planning, and you'll see more and more of that as we go. So we talk about tax rates going down, potential of them staying the same. And again, we talk about this micro approach to taxation and the goal of reducing taxes now, that immediate gratification, again, that this current generation experiences with other things that I mentioned, purchases, but also with regard to retirement savings, right? They'll take that deduction today on a traditional IRA or on a 401k or what have you, instead of more of a macro approach where we can reduce taxes not just for a year, but for a lifetime. That is tremendous. And that's our job. So let me just talk about Kevin and I for a moment, split second here. Our job as resources to you as financial professionals is to look beyond today and help you see beyond today. When I was a performer, I didn't sing to the front row. I sang to the entire audience. And that's looking beyond, and that's the macro approach that we take. So that's a real important concept. When it comes to the taxes, we help our people with a macro analysis. We have some very sophisticated software that really simplifies what this tax situation might look like for you. And I'm going to give you an example, hypothetical again. Here's a 45-year-old this time, 25% tax bracket, who's putting away $10,000 a year in a qualified account, assuming a 7% annual growth. And here's where I think some things are going to click even more. So again, 45 years old currently, 25% tax bracket, putting away $10,000 a year at 7% annual growth, planning on retiring in 20 years at age 65. and assuming 30 years of retirement living where we need to draw out an income. So by putting it in this IRA, he gets to defer $50,000 over these next 20 years. That's what it adds up to. But again, it's not a tax eliminated account, it's a tax deferred account. So the trade-off is I won't pay $50,000 in taxes now while I'm saving, but when I start spending, when I start receiving, when I start withdrawing, and all of that money is taxable, he's going to end up paying $247,776. So again, if we go back to the farmer with the seed or the harvest, you can see which one's which very clearly. And obviously we would much rather pay on the seed, the 50,000, instead of that 248, almost $250,000. So it's not a win. I don't know if that clicked, if that was eye-opening, if that was an aha moment for you, but I hope it was. So we're going to talk about a couple of things in a moment, but this is that snapshot that I mentioned, that tax analysis that we can do for you. So one of the things I'm going to have Kevin put up where you guys can reach out, you can schedule time with Kevin, and we can gather specific information to you to do this for you. No cost. This, again, everything that we do for you is at no cost, but you'll have a tax analysis that won't be generic. It'll be specific to you. Are you able to put something like that up, Kevin? You're muted.
Yeah. So I'll throw my meeting link in here so that everybody can get it. Yep. There you
go. While you do that, I'm going to answer one of the questions that came through. Otherwise, we'll save the questions till the end. But one of the questions that came through is, how often do you see when a spouse passes, the other spouse's tax burden increases? A lot. A lot. Again, that tax rate difference is dramatic.
And actually, we're working with a lady that's doing that right now. Her husband passed, 2 years ago, and she sold her house with a $400,000 gain. While she was married, that she would have had a $500,000 exclusion, but now she only has a $250,000 exclusion because she's single. So now she's paying taxes on up to $150,000 of her capital gain.
Right.
And that's a lot of money right there.
So Kevin put his link in the chat. I'll give you guys a minute if you're attending to that. Gives me an opportunity to take a sip of my water. And now we get to talk about what you all said is likely to happen. Taxes are likely to go up, right? They're going to go higher. So, and sometimes it's all legislative, right? The government decides we're going to have a tax increase. Well, we're going to have a tax increase. So are we prepared for that? Are we going to be blindsided by it? Are we going to be devastated by it? Is our retirement income going to be dramatically affected to the point where our quality of life is impaired? So, all of this comes into play. So proper planning, again, is the solution to this. If we're playing their game and they change the rules, we lose. If we're not playing their game and they change the rules, we're not affected. And that's where that open-minded to new ways of thinking and looking at retirement comes in that Kevin was talking about. So we'll get to that again. 3 ways future taxes could be higher. Well, again, tax bracket. They could change tax brackets. Your tax bracket could just change due to circumstance. That's one way, certainly, that we can be affected tax-wise. Our deductions could change. That happens. Or the amount that we're allowed to deduct might change. They may say we're allowed a $20,000 deduction on something, and now They change it to 10,000. Well, that's 10,000 less we can deduct. So whatever the example, just for example purposes, we're not in control of this. So this is another area that we might be affected. And of course, new taxes. You know, we always say that the tax law is written in pencil. I mean, they can change it. They can. We don't have that option to say, well no, I want to stick with the old tax plan. It doesn't work that way. So they can impose a new tax. They can change an old tax. A lot of things can change. And again, if we're playing in that game, then those are the rules that we have to live by. And that also just ties right in with this whole legislative risk that I talk about. We're at the mercy of legislation. So let's talk about not tax deferred. We've done that. Let's talk about tax free. Is there such a thing as tax free? Have you ever heard of tax free savings? Well, and tax free retirement. So let's go back to our friend here, 45-year-old that we said took on the harvest instead of dealing with the seed. So he deferred $50,000 in taxes while he's working and saving. So his obligation now is $248,000 and taxes in retirement. And it's likely that, let's think about that for a minute. When we're no longer trading our time for a paycheck, we're no longer going to work. We're just living on what we've accumulated. We do need to make it less. We do need all the pennies we've accumulated over the years. And he probably he could probably use that $248,000 in retirement. Probably wouldn't have missed the $50,000 while he was working because he was working. So it's just how my brain works. So let's talk about tax-free. What if instead we didn't defer taxes while we were working? We paid the taxes. What? Pay taxes? You just said tax-free. Well, I'm talking about in retirement. But while we're working and we can afford to pay a little bit of tax and the tax rate is very low, let's pay the taxes. Because then when you accumulate and it's time to harvest, you're not paying any taxes. Your tax obligation has been satisfied. So how do you do that? That becomes the question. So we'll touch on that. Roth accounts are one way to do that. They're one option, and they're right for the right person. They're maybe not the best solution for some people, but they're great. They're a great solution, right? If you meet the requirements and you play by the rules of the Roth, you put it in after tax and you take it out tax-free. Checks off the taxes box. It also addresses the saver's dilemma that we talked about with that risk versus reward situation. So we're going to talk about a third option that not only does that, but also addresses a protection element that many people need, and a legacy solution that might be important to make sure that our beneficiaries, our loved ones, our family, our heirs are taken care of as well. So to do this, we're going to talk about the IRS, everyone's favorite topic, and we're going to go to the book. We're going to go to Title 26 of the IRS Tax Code. And when we do that, and you see two volumes here, Title 26, 1 through 1000 and 1001 to the end. When we go through Title 26 and we go to Section 401 and we scroll down about halfway and we get to 401K, and somebody's bulb just went off on their head when they heard 401K. Here's what happens, right? We all think of 401K is what we take out at work. It's a product, right? It's that retirement plan I got at work. 401K is not a product. It is an IRS code in the tax guide. So we have to understand that. And it refers specifically to these qualified plans, these retirement plans, and their taxation and what they are good for and what they aren't, what they're allowed to do and what they aren't allowed to do. But we're going to talk about another one because we've already spent time on this and we're already familiar with this one. Just didn't know that that's what it was, right? We didn't know it was an IRS tax code. But we're going to talk more about Section 7702. Same book, same code, but Section 7702 deals with a different product. This product deals with the treatment of cash value life insurance. So let me address that for a minute, because a lot of people's heads just spun around probably. I can't see you, but I know the look. There was a commercial about 30 years ago for Oldsmobile. And said, this isn't your father's Oldsmobile. I don't know if you remember that, if you're old enough to know that. But that was a commercial saying, you know, we're not the same. We're different. And this is not that old cash value life insurance that your parents or grandparents had either that we're talking about, or the usage of it either. Very specific in what we can and can't do and how we might use this. Let me go to the next area for you. We talk about a product we call IUL. It's Indexed Universal Life. And what Index does, first thing it does is addresses that tax risk. When we put in money into an IUL, and by the way, the most wealthy people in the nation are using this strategy, Warren Buffett for one. So there's a no tax risk, and when we take out our money, it is tax-free. We have to legally seek generally tax-free because you can do something to change that. We can't. So as long as you stick to the rules of the contract that we explain it, your money is tax-free in retirement. We just did one the other night for a 34-year-old female. She's going to retire at 55. She'll put into the program for 20 years, and at 55, start drawing out for the rest of her life, $94,000 a year tax-free. 94,000 tax-free. So if that were before tax dollars, it's probably around 130,000 of pre-tax equivalent. So we can check that box, the tax risk and our tax-free money. So it doesn't matter what the government does with the tax rates or anything, because this is not does not fall under that umbrella. We don't have to claim this. It squashes the saver's dilemma because we have the power of indexing, which I'll explain to you in just a moment as well. And again, it has that other feature that I mentioned as well, because it is, in fact, at the end of the day, life insurance. There's a component there where there's a benefit for your family, your loved ones, and so on. Let's go back to this slide that we used earlier where we talked about the S&P 500. And we'll use this to explain to you what the power of indexing is. So when you invest in the market like this, we mentioned that we have ups and downs. We can gain 20%, we can lose 20%, right? Indexing says, what if you can experience gains when the market does well, but when the market does poorly, you can't experience a loss? Again, market does well, you can experience gains, but if the market does poorly, you can't experience a loss. So here's the power of indexing. In the same time period, if we had an indexed product, we would have almost the same exact amount of money without any of the downturns and with all of the other benefits that the life policy has that this doesn't, that the market product doesn't. It doesn't have a death benefit or any of that legacy feature. And in addition, hang on one more second, let me that legacy and death benefit portion. Let me go back here for a minute. If you look, let's just give you an example. So here is what they do, by the way. Let me explain how indexing works. Instead of being in the market, we're basing our interest on the market performance. Okay, so we're using a product that has what we call a cap of 11%. Now, various products have different caps, but this is a pretty common cap rate. And what that means simply is on the years that the market goes up, Like here's one where it's 21.83% increase. We're capped at 11. That's how the company can stay in business when it goes down 37% and we don't have a loss. We have zero gain. So when everyone at the water cooler is talking about how badly they did in the market last year, we had a 37% loss. Our clients aren't. They're saying they had no loss, no gain. We stayed constant. We never go backwards. We can only go forwards. The trade-off is we give up a little bit of the high end to have none of the low end, to have none of the downside, and every bit of it tax-free, where the stock market gains are not. This is going to be all tax-free to you in retirement. So a lot there, a lot of information. But again, as we go down this road to retirement, there are those things that we need to be mindful of and we need to keep our eye on. We want to make sure we're growing well. Well, the power of indexing does that for us. We need to be mindful of taxes, but we're not going to have any taxes. It's tax-free. The death benefit's tax-free. The income that we take from it is going to be tax-free. And if we need any of it in advance for circumstances like a serious illness or something like that, maybe to pay medical bills, or maybe we can't work because we're trying to heal from a serious illness, that's all tax-free as well. So huge benefits when we're talking about going down this winding road to get to income in retirement. And again, not to leave out the fact that we have protection for our heirs as well as an added bonus. So I'm going to have Kevin one more time put up the calendar link. One of the things that we're going to do for everybody is that wants to do this analysis, we're going to do that for you. And I think what I'd like to do is throw in all three analysis, not just the tax analysis, but let's do an IUL analysis to show you what that would look like in terms of income for you. We could show you if you have a qualified account, what we'll do an analysis on that for you as well. And everything again is so simplified. It's very, you don't have to be 29 years in the business to understand it. It's very easy, and we'll go through it with you each individually. And for anyone that does want to meet with us to discuss things in more depth and more detail, I just ordered books. They're not here yet, but I'm going to get you a copy of the New Rules of Retirement book. And I don't want to spoil anything, but it's a very special edition. I'm just going to leave it at that. You'll find out why when you receive it, but it's a very special edition. So I'll leave that alone for now. So if you would, Kevin, if that's up there, or if you need to put it back up there, I'm not sure. But if you haven't scheduled some time on there, I would say I highly recommend do that. And again, no obligation and there's no cost. So
A couple people have already scheduled, so I appreciate that. And I
Awesome.
appreciate having you here, Jeff. It was great. I know I always learn something new when you talk. I really do. So I think I speak for everyone in saying that it was a very informative presentation, and makes us all think of how we can beat Uncle Sam. I know I do that often myself, but you know, that's what I do. But I think everybody else might have had that thought cross their mind as well. And I'm happy that we added to our audience as the time went on as well. That leads me to our audience tonight. Thank you for attending. And you all have been great in participating in our polls and opening questions. I greatly appreciate that. In the chat box, I dropped my my link for meeting, and we'll go from there. We'll get you out your books as well. So feel free to email us anytime you need. And Jeff, there was another question that just came in. Who acts as the fiduciary for the individual accounts, and where is this money held?
So the one that we just talked about, the IUL, is again an indexed universal life. So it's a life insurance contract. So it would be with one of many different life insurance companies that we do business with. We have over 100 contracts between all lines of business that we associate with. So whether it's investment related, insurance related, what have you, we have over 100 companies that we contract with, so that we can do all the shopping and find the best solution, the right solution for each individual client. Because what's right for one of you won't be right for the next one of you. You have different goals, different risk tolerance, different requirements. So hope that helps.
Thank you for that. And then another question came in, is this for anyone or someone with a business? I think I can answer that pretty quickly and say this is for everyone, not anyone.
Yep.
All right. And what are the fees associated with individual accounts? So again, we have 100 different contracts, so the fees are all different. Obviously, you're going to pay an insurance fee because this is an insurance, so you're going to pay the cost of insurance at a very minimum.
But other than that, there's no, like most people that ask that question usually are used to like a management fee on a brokerage account. There's none of that. So there's no fees to us. We don't take a percentage or any of that. There's no fees at all, except like Kevin mentioned, there's a cost to have the product that you contribute. But other than that, there's no fees. Excellent question, because that is the most common thing that we're used to, right? Whether it's a 401k, an IRA, a separate stock account, brokerage account that we're dealing with, advisor, we're used to advisory fees. That's not the case in this product. One of the beautiful things about this is the separation, and this is why it's tax-free, by the way. We're able to keep separation from investment product and insurance product. If an insurance product ever crosses over and becomes an investment product, it loses all the tax-favored features that it has. So we never let that happen. But excellent question. I always say at the end, there are two systems of taxation in our country, one for the informed and one for the uninformed. And you guys, now you're informed. You have some ammunition, you have some education, you have something that you can use to now take the next step. And I think for those of you that have gotten on Kevin's schedule, that's where you start. And I'm here to help as well. I always participate whenever Kevin needs me. Again, Earth, Wind, and Fire did without me tonight, so I'm here with you. So anything you guys need, I'm here for you. Again, family tree, financial group, treat you as family. I would not turn away my brother or sister. So we're in this together to help you make the most of your retirement. And on that note, I'm good. I hope you guys also got something great out of tonight, and look forward to getting to meet you in person in the future.
All right, so thank you, Jeff. So I'm going to drop my link in here one more time, along with my email address, and then I'll leave this open for you guys for the next 5 minutes, so you can copy anything out of here that you need. Other than that, thank you very much, and have a great night.